Hello and welcome to this edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Jessica Williams. Jessica, can you give me a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Yes, ma'am. Like you said, my name is Jessica Williams. I am a writer and reporter for the Hernando Sun, as well as a freelance writer and journalist for Celebration magazine. It's a Walt Disney World magazine, as well as a journalist for the Citrus County Life magazine. And I also support authors and their new authors that, are trying to earn popularity through the Southern Literary Review. I do book reviews and try to support them that way. I believe those are pretty much the areas that I stay consistent in.
I want to ask about the Southern Literary Review. So you do book reviews that are published in the Southern Literary Review. Can anyone just send you a book? I mean, how do you get the books to review?
You have to go through, they also publish books, but there is a process. That specific process, step by step, I am not familiar with each and every step, but I work with the professor who is the president, I'd say president of the Southern Literary Review. He also works alongside the vice president who is here in Florida. Now, he resides in Alabama and Montgomery, I'm sorry. And so they work side by side, and they don't get paid to do this. They love to do it. They have a passion for it. So, and I don't get paid to do this. I want to do this.
If they were to go on the Southern Literary Review website, would they be able to find the submission information?
Absolutely. They would be able to find the contact information. Alan Mendenhall is his name, and he is a professor at Faulkner University. And he's very approachable and is very passionate about supporting aspiring authors and writers. And you just, to me, in the writing world, you have to have a passion for it. You're not looking you can't just be in it for the money.
What money? People make money in writing? Actually, some people get really lucky and do make a lot of money.
Well, some people, okay, yeah, I stand corrected. Some people, but most, even the ones, I don't know. I've read some biographies and autobiographies of successful writers, and the first steps they took out into the writing world were not easy ones. So I'm not sure if they started out wanting to or expecting to make a lot of money. So but it's a passion, just like anybody who has a passion about sports or really anything, any activity or hobby. You have to really love what you do.
Absolutely.
You have to love writing.
Absolutely. So I understand you took time off after a career in child and adult social services for a quote unquote less demanding profession, which would be writing. Do you actually find writing less demanding?
Yeah, I knew that was going to be a question. Well, when it comes to child and adult social services and the work I was in, then yes, because writing is it is demanding, but it's a bit more flexible than child and adult services. Now, granted, you can wake up at 2 a.m. and not be able to go to bed for a couple of hours because you have an idea and you have to put it on paper or type it somewhere. But working with victims of abuse and neglect can take its toll on someone. and usually does if you're in that profession. So I decided to change my avenue, and it worked it worked better for my family and for my son at the time, so I could have more flexible hours.
Very good. I know. I love the flexibility of writing. That muse stays with me though. So for example, last night she was doing a whole bunch of writing while I was trying to sleep, and she was really bothering me. But nonetheless, I am better for it in the morning. So
Yeah.
how long did it take you to accomplish multiple publications and become a newspaper reporter?
It actually didn't take me as long as I anticipated, and I really didn't have any expectations. I kind of set out into this writing world of, okay, well, if I fail miserably, that's okay, because we can always find something else. But it took me about a year, and that's not very long at all, or less than a year, really. I started out after I left my career in child and adult social services. I wanted to do something part-time while I explored this writing world. And I decided, I came across this older gentleman. He's in his early 70s and just refused to retire. And so he was a life insurance broker. Yeah, that's very random. But he understood some things that I was going through at the time, some difficult times that I had to face. And so he said, would you like, I kind of need somebody right now to work for me part-time. Would you be willing? And I said, sure. And so he was kind of like a mentor / part-time, boss for me. And so in one of our meetings or luncheons, I guess, for business, I randomly sat beside a woman who is the publisher of Citrus County Life magazine. And I sat there, and they all went through, an introduction of who they were and what they do. So the minute she said who she was and what she did for a living, she caught my undivided attention. Wait a minute, can you say that again? Who are you?
You have a card.
And yeah, and so I just chatted with her and asked her a few questions and said, well, I know this sounds really crazy, but could I just write a drafted article about anything really, if you need a theme, or can I just send it to you? I said, if you don't like it, you won't offend me. I just want to see how this goes. And she said, sure, here's my email address, and send it to me whenever you have it ready. So I did. It wasn't too long after that, I had my very first published in her magazine. And I was like, wow, does this happen regularly to people? Because this seemed pretty quick. Because I had read articles after articles of people being frustrated with how difficult it was to being published. And it randomly, happened to me. I didn't even know the woman. I just started up a conversation with her, and that's how I got my first published piece. And after that, I published a few more for her magazine, and one feature story that I did that she specifically assigned to me was about a very talented high school softball pitcher, and who had a challenging background, had faced some pretty hard, I'd say, adversities in her life. And for a young teenage girl to survive those and to just become this, success as a softball pitcher was just phenomenal. And so she wanted me to do this piece, and I did it. And she was just very grateful that I, did this piece on her. I met with her and her mother, and the interview was quite emotional. surprisingly enough, because, you have to dig deep into someone's personal life to get a really great piece. And they were willing to do it, but I'd say it wasn't easy. It has to become emotional to be good. But what happened after that, to me, which I never expected, was that piece was the reason someone hired me as a reporter or writer for a local newspaper. So one thing led to another, for me. I had written about her journey, and little did I know that a journey had begun for me. So it kind of has this.
Yeah, that's a
story
wonderful
to it.
parallel. I love the parallel that is. That's a very interesting way to look at it. And you also have the opportunity to write for the Celebrations magazine. So you say that's Walt Disney World magazine, or is it just for the local celebration community?
There are no. It's published worldwide and nationwide to whoever subscribes to the magazine. It's read by a lot of people. There is Celebration magazine, and there's also Walt Disney World magazine, which is WDW. So there's two Walt Disney World magazines. I write for Celebration. That adventure is also interesting. And all thanks, of all sources, Facebook, which we all have different opinions about. But Facebook, I like Facebook, but I use Facebook probably differently than other people do, more for a networking type of source than, expression type of source. But how I got to, or how I became a writer for Celebration is I was on Facebook one day several months ago, and I was going through posts, and of all people, my mother had posted something that was interesting to me. She posts many things, like many mothers do. They love to share things over and over and over again. And she posted a brief piece of information about how the Black Pearl, which is Captain Jack Sparrow's ship in the Pirates of the Caribbean. Are you familiar with that?
I am, yes.
Okay. So how the Black Pearl, the ship itself that's used in several of the films, was created and built in Ballabhatchery, Alabama, which most people have never heard of because it's in the deepest southern part of Alabama. And it just happens to be right next door to the small town I grew up in, which is Grand Bay, Alabama. Nobody's ever heard of that place either. It's in Mobile County, Alabama. And so the post, I had commented on it saying, hey, this sounds interesting, like most people do. And lo and behold, my mother's teacher friend, she's an elementary school teacher, her teacher friend commented and say, hey, my husband worked on that ship. And then I said, really? That sounds interesting. And she and I got to talking about her husband working on the ship a few years ago that was used in many of the films. And one thing led to another. And I, as a freelance writer, you contact a lot of editors. You contact a lot of people to see if they're interested in what you have to, write and propose. And you get used to rejection. Okay, that's just part of it. That's part of being a freelance writer. So I proposed this piece to the editor of Celebrations magazine, who I had never spoken to or contacted before. And I drafted this article, and he said, yes, I love this. And then he wanted me to ask the gentleman, the electrical engineer, who had naval experience as well, Mr. Overstreet, who had worked on the ship and had lots of pictures to share and everything. He said, yeah, we'll do a piece on that. We'll do that. And so I wrote it within, a couple of months. It was published, and I was holding in my hand an article that I had written for a Walt Disney World magazine. It just kind of, I don't know whether to credit just talking to people, just asking people questions, or whether to, you got to credit Facebook, or else it would have never happened. But it's just networking and connecting with people. I think everybody has a story. That was his story that he shared with me, that I shared with the editor, and that's how it happened.
Those are fantastic stories, and what wonderful advice that you've offered, which is get used to rejection because it's going to happen, and that you just communicate and you have a conversation with people because you never know where it's going to lead. Jessica, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I do, like I said, I am on Facebook and I network with people that way mostly. And I do have an email address that I extend out periodically and frequently. So by email and by Facebook mostly.
But Jessica, are you ready now to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Have you ever been to Dallas?
Have I ever been to Dallas?
Correct.
Dallas, Texas. No, I have
Correct.
not.
You have not been to Dallas. Well, it's a nice city. I live in Houston right now, and so I think Houston's better than Dallas, but that's a whole other story. And
I have a niece and nephew and a brother-in-law and sister-in-law who live in Houston. So I'm more of a fan of Houston anyway.
All right. Yeah, we're right off that I-10, we have that connection. So
yes.
Going through Mobile, I understand. Do you own a food processor?
I do not.
You do not. Oh, you're missing out. Make your own homemade pasta. And what is your favorite band?
My favorite band is, I'd say I'm a country music fan. So the first one that comes to mind is the Zac Brown Band.
Zac Brown Band. I got to see him in person, and he is a lot of fun in concert.
Very nice.
Yes, so if you get the opportunity, I would recommend it. Highly recommend it. Very entertaining. Very entertaining. Singer and band, and they always do a patriotic thing. It's really nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun.
This has been another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. Allison out.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Jessica Williams lives in Central Florida, is an alumni of the University of Alabama. She is a reporter and writer for the Hernando Sun, a contributor for the Citrus County Life magazine, and a journalist and contributor for Celebrations magazine for Walt Disney World, and Memory Well. She also supports authors as a contributor for Southern Literary. Review. For more information about Jessica, visit her on the web at Facebook.com/jess.williams.18007218.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us on the web, floridawriters.net.